Good morning. It is Sunday, March 13th. This was qualifying week at the state capitol. We look at the matchups ahead in the May primary. A new poll includes an encouraging number for Governor Brian Kemp in his re-election bid. And leaders work to suspend Georgia's gas tax as prices continue to rise at the pump. This week's panel, Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha weigh in on those topics and more. This is the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Claire Sims in for Lori Geary. Candidates had to put their money where their mouth is this week and officially qualify to be on the ballot in 2022. And now the real work begins, especially for those running for the state's top job.
Oh, wow.
Surrounded by supporters, Governor Brian Kemp pitched Georgia voters on why he is the best candidate to lead the state for the next 4 years. The Republican incumbent outlined his accomplishments, but also acknowledged the road to re-election will not be easy.
The media, Hollywood, and the elites will be against us again. But you know what? They've come for us before. And together we have stood strong and won. And I'll promise you this, we are not taking one single thing, one single vote for granted in this race.
Former Senator David Perdue complicated Kemp's path to victory by running against him in the Republican primary. Perdue explained his reasons for getting into the race shortly after qualifying Wednesday.
I just don't see how Brian's going to pull together all of the Republican Party to stand up against Stacey. They're too upset about too many things right now. So I believe, based on what we did in 2020, I'm the guy that can pull us together.
Both men have their sights set on a showdown with Democrat Stacey Abrams, who lost to Brian Kemp by about 55,000 votes in 2018. Her message during qualifying centered on her love for the state, even those who disagree with her.
We need a leader who sees the future for Georgia, one where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and where we treat the state as one Georgia, not as separate, divided parts or people with too many differences, but a place where differences make us stronger.
So, Phil, I want to start with you. It was interesting that in his remarks, Governor Brian Kemp did not mention Senator Perdue by name. Is that a strategy?
It's a good strategy. Everything that would unite Republicans of all stripes, including a lot of independents, is Stacey Abrams and the specter of her becoming governor, and the fact that there is now a wave against the Democrats right now because of everything from high grocery prices to high gasoline prices. And so I think that it was smart. David Perdue, his opponent, will also be doing the same thing. Talk about Stacey Abrams.
Melita, Stacey Abrams really said that she's going to be focusing her campaign on a lot of the same issues that she ran on 4 years ago, including Medicaid expansion. That was something we heard her say over and over again this week. Are those issues that are still going to resonate with voters 4 years later?
Absolutely, and I think the Medicaid expansion in particular resonates even more in the midst of the repercussions from the COVID pandemic and the number of people who have long-term consequences as a result of the COVID pandemic. So I think she has a strong platform to run on because the Republicans have not addressed that issue.
All right, let's move on to a new poll out this week. Could spell some good news for Governor Brian Kemp and his primary chances. Take a look. The Fox News poll showed Governor Kemp with an 11-point lead over David Perdue, but more importantly, it shows Kemp hitting that very important 50% mark. That's the number that he needs to avoid a runoff. Theron, I know it's early, but can the Kemp campaign breathe a sigh of relief at this point, or do we still have too much ahead?
It's still a lot of time left in this race, and I think if you listen to what the governor said, he's not taking anything for granted. But you're right, Claire. I mean, last week I talked about how the governor was below 50%. So if you're in his campaign right now, you're like, okay, we finally hit 50%. But I would tell you this: I'm hearing a lot more people in the Atlanta area and some of the rural areas sort of saying that they have not counted out David Perdue just yet. Now, he is running against an incumbent governor who has broke the 50% mark. But if he's able to pull together a coalition and get some momentum, and the former president has not come to the state yet, I just think that you can't breathe a sigh of relief just yet. But I do think that this governor has a plan to make sure that he's ready for when Trump comes to town and attacks him even more than he has in the past.
Okay, everybody wants to weigh in. Martha, you can go first.
No, look, Obviously, Senator Perdue can't be happy that he's had 3 polls now where he's not gaining ground, he's losing ground. But it is still very early, and it is not at the end of the session where the governor is really in the news cycle every single day. So I wouldn't count anybody out at this point in time, but I think that it's going to be a very important message, because it's not believable whether you talk to the Kemp people or you talk to the Perdue people. None of them are believing that either people are going to be able to unite people afterwards. There's a real concern about that, that even though they're saying, oh yeah, we want to unite people, how do you do it? And so that's the real challenge. How do we get there? We've got 2 months. This is really the beginning of the race in a lot of ways. Qualifying, you got the real names, you know who they are, and then you can look at it.
All right, Melita.
I think the real challenge will be seeing where the dark money in this race goes and what impact the independent expenditures on behalf of Perdue and Kemp will be, and how much dark money goes to either of those 2 candidates, and whether indeed Trump supporters will come behind Perdue with a lot of independent expenditures.
Phil, you wanted to weigh in as well.
I think there's a flaw in this poll, and that is that it's polling all Republicans, not primary voters. Three times more Republicans vote in the general election than they do in primaries. So it could be that it's a tie. It could be that Perdue is very competitive. It's interesting, Thera, you're hearing that Perdue is doing a lot better. Only 50% of the people now, according to this poll, realize that Perdue is endorsed by Trump. And so that means, in my opinion, Martha, I think Perdue is going to be gaining some ground here.
All right. Well, Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock also qualified for re-election, but the fireworks in that race came on the Republican side this week as a debate popped up about debates. State Agriculture Commissioner Gary Black, who's now running for U.S. Senate, called out fellow Republican Herschel Walker, who's currently the frontrunner in that race, saying that it's time for him to talk about his stances on immigration, inflation, and other top issues.
Those kind of things are really important in a race like this, and I promise you, we're going to be talking about them. It's time for him to come out of the basement so we can have an honest discussion with Georgians.
Walker, though, would not commit to debating his primary opponents.
I'm not going to play games. I'm not going to here to do that. I think if people are speaking, Herschel is here to debate Raphael Warnock, because I'm going to win this primary, and I'm going to the general to beat him as well.
So, Martha, is this going to backfire?
Look, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Right now, where the numbers are, okay, if I were advising Herschel Walker, I would say it's not necessary for you to debate at this point in time, because he really has nowhere to go but down if that's the case. So of course his opponents want to debate him because that's their opportunity to gain in the polls, okay? But you know, things could change. He has gone from something like 80% to 65%. I don't know if that 80% number at the beginning was real or not. So it might be that they'll make a decision. But again, I don't think it's a bad move on his part based on where he is right now in the polling.
Theron, I've heard some concerns, though, that practicing now in a debate scenario gets you ready for the general. What do you think about that?
That's exactly what I was going to say, Claire. I think that I'm not advising Herschel, and you guys will do this, but I just don't think you put someone on the national stage. This will be a national debate. If he is the nominee, the first senatorial debate between him and U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock is going to gain national attention because, number one, this is a seat that Democrats want to protect, and this is also a seat that Republicans feel like they can pick up. But the thing that I think that you got to commend Gary Black on is that he has not raised enough money yet to go on paid advertisement. I mean, I guess Janelle is probably coming back to the show, maybe or maybe not, because I don't really see anything from Kelvin. And in Lathan Sadler, I keep hearing he's going to raise some money, he's going to go out there.
Well, he's got money.
He's got money. He's got money. He was going to raise more. And so what Gary Black did very strategically is use the media to come out and sort of say, hey, where is this guy? But I kind of agree with Martha, too, that if I was advising him and you're up that far in the polls, you probably don't debate. But again, in this culture that we're in, one mistake, one bad thing comes out, and those numbers can change pretty quickly.
All right, I want to squeeze this in. There was a little bit of a surprise announcement when it came to qualifying this week. Former Atlanta City Councilman Kwanzaa Hall, who also served as for a short time in Congress, finishing out John Lewis's final term, he threw his hat in the ring for lieutenant governor. Melita, did anybody see this coming?
I didn't see that coming, but you know, the lieutenant governor's race has 4 Republicans, 9 Democrats, and 1 Libertarian. So that race is headed for a runoff on both sides of the aisle. The Attorney General candidates each drew an opponent from their own party. That was unexpected. The Labor Commissioner race is quite crowded. The Secretary of State race is quite crowded. All of those races, most of those races, have Libertarians in them. There's even some last-minute competition for the Public Service Commission on the Democratic side. So we're going to have some very spirited down-ballot cases.
What do you think that means? People are energized, interested, engaged?
The other race that we need to pay very close attention to on the Democratic side is state school superintendent. Mm-hmm. And so you have former state representative Alicia, now Cersei, used to be Alicia Thomas Morgan Cersei, who just qualified as we are taping. And so that's a race. You also have Jaha Howard, who's in that race, who's run before, who's on the school board. So Democrats, Claire, I'm telling you, we are fired up. We believe that we got a lot of women on the ticket, and the men as well, that are going to be able to compete when it comes to November, and once the ticket is sort of settled.
All right.
Well, so do the Republicans have women and minorities, so it just balances out.
Yeah. Well, there
very
were
quickly
524 people who had qualified by Wednesday evening. Of those, 209 were incumbents, 315 were new candidates. Of the incumbents, 81 were Democrats and 128 were Republicans. So Democrats have more new candidates, but both parties have a lot of new candidates and a lot of incumbents. But it's going to be spirited all the way down the ballot and all across the state.
It will be fun to watch. All right, coming up, how state leaders hope to ease some of the pain at the pump.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
We've all felt it. Gas prices continue to soar as the Russian invasion of Ukraine sends ripple effects across the globe. This week, Governor Brian Kemp said he would work with the General Assembly to pass a bill temporarily suspending the collection of state motor fuel taxes.
Gasoline prices are going up. I mean, this morning it looked like another 10 cents, I think, overnight. That's hurting Georgians, and this will be some relief for them.
Melita, how big of an impact do you think this will have?
Well, it certainly will help the average voter, and it's a great move which will play well with the voters. But I think we all need to be mindful that higher gas prices are a small sacrifice compared to what the Ukrainian people are going through at this time in their defense of democracy.
But if the government can suspend the 23 cents is substantial, okay? And if they can do that and help in the short term, because gas prices are going to keep going up, and this just helps in the long term, talking about doing it on the federal level too for a period of time. So I think it's the right move, because if you talk about something that is kind of an equalizer, everybody's got to go to the pump and fill up, right? And if you're at the low end of the income spectrum, you're paying a lot more, and it's big.
But we got to call balls and strikes, and shout out to the Atlanta Braves World Series champs.
And baseball will be back.
Absolutely, and thank God for that. But you got to give Senator Warnock some credit here too, because he went to Washington, introduced federal legislation called the Gas Prices Relief Act that is going to suspend the 18 cents.
I mentioned that.
Yeah, I mentioned that. And so I think what we saw here is whether it was directly or indirectly, a spirit of bipartisanship, because I think Senator Warnock's efforts sort of triggered and gave the governor the ability to say, hey, we'll work with the federal government, but we'll do our part in the state as well.
Warnock is feeling the pressure from the people because he has supported the attack on the fossil fuel industry. He's attacked natural gas and oil. He's a puppet of Biden, and this is just window dressing. And I think the Republicans by Tuesday will do this nice cut. I'm surprised some Democrats are even pushing against it.
Yeah, I think it's called leadership. That's what Senator Warnock did. Yeah,
attacking the fossil fuel industry.
But I think we
That's
can say
leadership.
that. But basically, I agree with Martha. You had two people who are in a position of power to do something about this issue, and I think Senator Warnock went first, and then the governor came right behind him, and I think the two of them working together ultimately.
Warnock's trying to fix a problem he's created. He voted against the Keystone Pipeline 4 times last year. He hates oil and gas industry.
This Keystone Pipeline has been talked about for a long time.
Well, you're against it, I know.
No, you've put words in my mouth. I never said that.
Those are sound bites.
Yeah.
That Keystone
Pipeline.
Pipeline.
Are you for it? Oh, this would make news. Are you for the Keystone Pipeline?
Let's stay objective.
Yeah,
right?
you don't want to answer
We're talking
that.
about gas prices.
You don't want to answer that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. There's a push by some state lawmakers to create a prosecuting attorneys oversight commission. The group would have the power to discipline, remove, or even retire district attorneys or solicitors general in Georgia. Phil, I know you wanted to talk about this one. Is this a good idea?
This is a great idea. It's long overdue. For viewers, they need to know that judges are under the aegis of what they call the Judicial Qualifications Commission, and it's a watchdog, it's an oversight. Many of the judges that were dirty have been removed, and some have landed in jail. But DAs don't have this. District attorneys need oversight too. In fact, there were just 3 district attorneys over the last couple of years that had to be removed from office. It's tough to remove them. And so this would be a watchdog group. You'd have an investigatory power, and I think it's needed.
Question though, district attorneys are elected. So are the voters not a check and balance here, Melita?
Well, district attorneys are elected every 4 years. And not everybody understands that there are only 50 district attorneys in Georgia as compared to many hundreds of judges. And it is, Phil's correct, it's absolutely necessary to have some oversight. The Ahmaud Arbery case sadly showed us what a district attorney can do to thwart justice, and she now faces charges herself. But I think we have to be careful about how this process is structured, because district attorney elections were the last white male bastion of power in Georgia. I know you say that we talk about race too often.
What does that have to do with it?
Well, if you're talking about shifting power, race and gender are the ways power shifts. And
but
there are
the district attorney
36.
You just talked about was a female.
That's true.
Okay.
There are 36 male DAs. 26 of them are Republicans. There are 9 Dems and 1 independent, and then the remaining are women. Some of them Democrats, some of them are women. And in 2020, we saw a record number of women district attorneys elected, many of them women of color. So we need to make sure that however this process works, it's not a way to attack newly elected women.
Well, who said it would be attacking newly elected women?
I'm just saying we have
it's
to
just the JQC. I don't see where there's a problem here.
I'm not saying there's a problem.
Some of this oversight. Sorry to interrupt. Some of this oversight already, to your point, Claire, already sort of is responsibility of the Attorney General. I mean, and so the DAs, kind of report up to the Attorney General. So I would suspect that this is something that he's got to continue to pay very close attention to, because you're right, what we saw happen down in Brunswick probably has been going on for a very long time, and that's why I think he has got to send a clear message that that type of behavior would not be tolerated in Georgia.
Okay, we do have to move on. Coming up next, voters go to the polls to say no to a planned spaceport. We'll discuss.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
This week, residents in Camden County voted overwhelmingly to opt out of a contract to buy land for a spaceport. Opponents complained about a lack of transparency and cited concerns about the flight paths, but the county has already spent several years and millions of dollars on the project and is now fighting those results in court. Melita, should the county leaders listen to the voters here?
I would think they should, or they'll have to listen to them in a defeat later. I mean, this is a 7-year, $10 million expenditure. The vote was 3-1. The question was poorly worded. A vote yes was really a vote against. A vote no was really a vote for the spaceport. And I just think that this shows that citizens are very concerned about the environmental impact of new industry and new projects, just as we've seen with the Rivian plant.
Theron, and then we'll go to Martha.
The thing that's very interesting about this spaceport idea in Camden County is that we're talking about a county that's a population of about 55,000 people. And so to Melita's point, it was very low turnout, I think roughly around 10%. And so we know that being on this panel, whenever you have something that's very controversial on a ballot, usually the people who oppose it are more motivated to come out. But the other thing that you got to say in this is that this county has spent years investigating this. It could be a booming economic impact for that county and for that region. And the county has done many studies. There have been a lot of judicial, judgments that have been in the county favor. So I don't think this is over just yet. I think you're going to see the county come back with some better messaging, and they're going to talk to those folks who are opposed to it. But I think when it's all said and done, I think that the spaceport has been thoroughly investigated. It's got funding there, and I think ultimately it's going to create jobs.
Martha.
Yeah, I mean, what he said, I think this is a great project, and I have known about it for years, and they have done the research and put it out there. And to your point, the people that don't like it sometimes are the ones that are most likely to get out. But it'll come to a vote again. I don't think it's going to go away.
But the people did speak loudly.
They did speak
that
loudly.
There needs to be some more work done to communicate with them.
And I think maybe it reflects.
And just for the viewers, so they know what we're talking about, it's about purchasing the land.
Right. Right.
That's the big issue.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes.
This one was a talker at the state capitol. A bill that would have added exceptions to Georgia's hands-free law failed this week in the state Senate. It would have allowed drivers to touch their phones while at a complete stop at a traffic signal, and only if it was secured in a dashboard or windshield mount. Now, the bill failed by a vote of 35 to 14. But it's something that everybody has been talking about. What do you guys think about this one?
Go ahead. I'll come
Look,
back.
I think that this bill has helped in a lot of ways. Not the bill that didn't pass, but the original bill has helped in a lot of ways. But it's also one of those things that's really hard to enforce. And I think with Frank, in fairness to him, what he was trying to do is that most people are doing that, okay? And the police don't have the resources to stop every person that picks up a phone at a stoplight or when they're at a complete stop. So I think it's one of those difficult things, but it has helped as far as the kinds of wrecks they were trying to avoid. So I think it's probably okay that it didn't pass, but I think Frank was just trying to address something that is already happening.
Well, he said one of his big concerns was that it's easy for a law enforcement officer to sit at a red light and see you when you pick up your phone. He said he was more concerned about people who are texting while actually moving. Darren, what do you think about that?
You know, Senator Ginn is a good Republican senator. He represents a portion of Athens. My mom, keeps him honest, and he watches the show. And I think when Senator Ginn explained it to me, Claire, it was like that because honestly, it's forced me to go out and actually buy one to dash sort of holsters. And my mom is a big proponent of me not, texting while I'm at the stoplight. But he also made a really big safety concern about this, that basically we shouldn't punish law-abiding citizens and turn them into criminals because we do have to depend on our men and women in law enforcement to interpret whether or not the person was texting while driving. And so even though this bill got shut down, I think Senator Ginn should be applauded for his bravery to really go into an arena and talk about a very controversial issue.
All right.
It is tough on a law enforcement officer.
It is tough on them.
I
It
agree
is
with
tough
that.
on them.
I think it was best it was defeated.
All right. Well, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, a lot to talk about this week, but Theron, you want to go first?
Absolutely. I want to wish a big happy birthday to Ambassador Andrew Young. He turned 90 this week. I look forward to going to his big party this weekend. So happy birthday, Ambassador Young. Also want to make Carmen Chubb, who's the former chief of staff for Mayor Bottoms. She is now the president of Columbia Residential, a big affordable housing company here. And then lastly, I want to give a big shout out to Angela Howard and Leah Howard. And I met them in the Buckhead shops. They're big fans of the show. Definitely want to give them a shout out. And then lastly, Anna Roach, who just became the Atlanta Regional Commission Executive Director, and definitely she's going to be replacing Doug Hooker, who did a wonderful job in that position.
Martha?
I want to make one quick correction from last week. I said last week that Susan Holmes represented Rutledge. She represents Monticello, but she is in the 4-county area that is the JDA with Rivian. So I want to make that one quick correction. I love that Melita said dark money when she was talking about the money that would come in behind. I think it's very interesting that when Republicans are raising money, it's called dark money, and when Democrats are raising it, it's called deep pockets. So I think that's very interesting. And I want to make a winner this week, Ambassador Young also, because he was one of the best interviews I ever did. He came up to Gainesville, spent about 2 hours with me, and is just one of the best people out there.
Melita?
I agree and join those congratulating Ambassador Young on his 90th birthday. I've certainly always been very, very fond of him. My other winner is Mary Margaret Oliver for the way she presented the omnibus mental health bill. I don't think anyone on either side of the aisle could have done such a masterful job in presenting that bill and calmly walking her colleagues through all of the implications it has for Georgia's families. My loser is Georgia's congressional embarrassment from the 14th District for her stock trading in energy and military stocks right before the invasion of Ukraine. She continues to set a new low bar.
All right, Phil.
I thought you were going to say Nancy Pelosi, who does the same stock trading. But anyhow, I got a winner. I've got a winner, and that is Major League Baseball. We briefly mentioned at the top of the show. Everything's going to start. The champion Braves are going to start April 7th. So that's great. And also, I've got a loser, potential loser. It's COAM legislation. These coin-operated machines, you see them in supermarkets. And I'm a veteran, and it's in my American Legion Post 29, and I don't want to see some of those portion of money getting away from the lottery or from veterans groups. So I think it's a tricky legislation, and I'm very, very skeptical of it.
All right. We actually have a minute left. I'm shocked if anybody wants to have anything else to add.
Well, I thought one of the interesting things about the candidates that we didn't mention is Patrick Witt, who was in the magical mystery tour that is known as the 10th Congressional District, with all the people getting in and out. He has decided to run for insurance commissioner, which gives John King, who is just an amazing person, gives him an opponent there. And we expect he's going to get the Trump endorsement over the weekend, and he'll be on my program on Monday to talk about that. So that, I thought, was one of the interesting ones that are in there. And then up in the 49th, there is a Democrat that's going to qualify, first time in a very long time, Jody Cooley.
Another big surprise, if I may, real quick. Chris Carr, the Attorney General, got opposition in the Republican primary from an attorney named John Gordon.
The other thing that's kind of like a little bit of a bittersweet sort of tone is that Kyle Mismari, who's been elected since 1974, will not be qualifying again this week. So I definitely want to thank him publicly again for his outstanding service.
Let's all make him a winner.
That's
right.
All right.
Yeah. The Dean. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll see you back here next time.